Hello friends, what is up? This is Vishal Gupta and today we would be discussing a very easy topic called local variables versus global variables. So I found out that many of my friends have problem in this topic, so I just thought I'll cover it. So a local variable is any variable that's defined inside a function. So if we remember, a function is declared as the function name and then followed by the body. So any variable that gets defined inside the body becomes a local variable. So for example, in this case, we have a function called function1 and then we have a variable called x equal to 3. So x gets defined inside the body of the function1, so therefore x is a local variable. Then a global variable is any variable that is not defined inside a function. So in this example, x equal to 3 and then you define the function1 and you define another variable y equal to 4 inside the function. So notice that x equal to 3 is defined outside the function. Therefore x is a global variable, and since y is defined inside the function, therefore y is a local variable. Then moving on to a few differences between local variable and global variable. A local variable is valid only in the defined function. So if I define a value in function 1 and I want to access it in some other function, then I cannot do that that value is uh, because that variable is local to the previous function and it cannot be used in other function. Whereas a global variable can be used in any function and its value can be used throughout the code in any function. The second point being that you can change the value of a local variable any time in the defined function. So say I define the variable x inside a function, then I can change the value of x anytime. Whereas if we want to change the value of a global variable inside a function, then we first need to define the keyword global inside the function to denote that the variable that I will be using in this function is actually the global variable x, and then you can make changes to the variable inside the function which will then change the value of the variable x, that is the global variable. So now let's just go and look at few examples of how local variables and global variables work. So this is our example one where I've defined x is equal to 3 as a global variable, and then I have a function y where I basically pass a value at the value of the global variable and return it. Notice that in this case x is a global variable inside the function, since we are just using the value of x inside the function and we can use the value of a global variable anytime. It is only when we want to change the value of x that we need to define the keyword global x. So in this case, it would pass the value 3 and 3 plus 3 would return 6. So it would print 6. Then let's move on to the second example. In the second example, I have defined x equal to 3 as a global variable, and then in the function, I have taken two other variables, x and y. Notice that in this function, x is basically a local variable. So I would pass values 2, 4 to this function, which should be assigned to the local variables x and y. And since x equal to x plus y is all are all local variables, therefore it wouldn't show an error. So it would basically return 2 plus 4, which is 6, and if you print it would give me 6. So now let us move on to the third example. The third example states that x is 3, and say I write a function which would add a particular value, the global variable. So say I say x equal to x plus y, and I try to pass the value 5 and I try to print it. So I get a weird error saying that undefined error, local variable x is referenced before x assignment. So notice that here I wanted to use the value x, that is the global variable. So since I am changing the value of a global variable inside a function, therefore I need to first define x as global x. Now since I've defined global x, therefore it would make x as a global variable, and then you can change the value whatsoever. So now if you try to run it, you get the value 8, and these are a few simple examples that will clear your doubts. So now I'm going to talk about when to use global variables in our program and when to use local variables in our program. So convention is that uh, if if you have a variable that is being used across many other functions, then better to define that variable as a global variable. So for instance, say at the beginning of the day you have a variable called money, which is basically the money that you possess. Say it is 1,000, and then say you have to go to a shop, you have to go to a restaurant, you have to go to a movie. So basically in all these functions, the variable that would be operated upon is your money would be deducted. So it is better to use money as a global variable since it is being used across all functions. So when to use local variables? Well, we should use local variables when the value is not needed in any other function and it's only needed in one function. So for example, let's consider a very funny example. Say I have a function called stomach, say it's my stomach. So obviously my stomach, I would eat food. I would eat my food, say my food is pizza. So obviously my food would go in my stomach and not in someone else's stomach. So over here you can use my food in only this function, and so you can declare my food as a local variable. So this is how you can differentiate between local variables and global variables and use them wherever in your program. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.